Booker, Stryker, Tom Morello of many bands and himself. Nice
What's
to
up,
see you.
Tom Morello?
Hello, it's nice to see you guys. It's good to be here.
Oh, man. Wait, so you're playing a show tomorrow at the Roxy.
That's
I just want
correct.
to ask straight away, does Roman join you for one song, two songs, or no songs?
Well, Roman will be there, and I think we're going to leave it a surprise how many songs.
Okay.
But he's been Roman, of course, is my 13-year-old guitar prodigy son, who's writing big hits for big hit movies, and he'll be there, and he's ready to blow the roof off the joint.
So, as a pretty accomplished guitarist yourself, having a kid do things, I assume there's a lot of different things that he does as well. Do you sit back sometimes in awe? Do you
Well,
coach
first of all,
him?
I've been relegated to being the rhythm guitar player in my family
Oh,
now.
got
So I'm
it.
like instructed what chord progression to play while he shreds
like
over
that.
it until he's done. That's what. It was during. First of all, my two kids had no interest in the family business, none whatsoever. They'd never really had heard Rage Against the Machine, like ever. Then pandemic times came, and while everybody else was baking sourdough bread, my youngster was learning Stairway to Heaven. I started out in the middle of a Fortnite marathon or something. I was like, could you spare 5 minutes to learn the first 3 notes of Stairway to Heaven? He's like, I'll give you 4. So the next day I gave him the next 3 notes, and the third day he came back and asked me if we could keep going with it, and that was the traction we needed.
And does Roman not only play well, which you just said that he does, but does he create his own sounds for you and himself on guitar?
Well, I mean, I just steal the best of his stuff right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, the couple of songs we've done, "Soldier in the Army of Love" and "One Last Dance," were basically me just walking by his room and going like, "What's that?" And he says, "It's something I'm working on." I said, "Can I borrow that for a big hit Hollywood movie soundtrack?" Yeah.
And how did it work with grandson and your son and you? Because you've worked with grandson before, but now you got your son involved.
That's right. So the Venom, Sony reached out about the Venom movie because they loved the song that I done with grandson, "Hold the Line." That was already going to be in the film.
Song.
They said, "Can you guys come up with an end title, like a theme for the movie?" And we said, well, give it a shot. There was a very narrow window. It was like 72 hours to get this thing together. So I sent grandson, I got a bunch of riffs on my phone. I sent him like 25 riffs, and the one he picked was Romans.
Whoa.
Nice. You playing Romans?
What's that?
Were you playing Romans,
we
or
both,
he actually was playing that?
No, it was him.
It was his riff.
Wow.
That is insane.
So it was like a blind Coke Pepsi taste test.
Is it weird losing the taste test?
Well, at this point, I just think it's awesome to be able to have there's a lot of low-hanging great riff fruit in the Morello tree right now. So it's pretty awesome.
When you see somebody like Jacob Knoll, who's the son of the late, great Bradley Knoll, who's been stepping in for his dad and doing an unbelievable job. Do you have thoughts, or you see that happening and you feel something there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, last summer, Roman came on tour with me, and we were playing festivals in front of 60,000 people, opening the show with him and our song. And I remember the first big festival was like somewhere in Spain. There was like 60,000 people, and he said he normally doesn't get nervous because it's really kind of just like we jam like we do in his bedroom. It's not that big a deal when you're playing a club show or whatever. And he was like, "Dad, I feel a little bit nervous." I'm like, "Well, do you know the song?" So he's like, "Yeah, I know the song." He's like, "Are you confident that I know the song?" He's like, "I'm pretty confident that you know the song." He said, "Then it's going to be okay." But I will say the funniest thing when we were getting ready for the tour, I was on tour for about a month before he joined me. And I called him up and I said, "Dude, there's a couple tunes. Have you learned them?" He's like, "Dad, I know them." I said, "Right now I'm practicing my stage moves."
Oh.
I'm like, "You're practicing your stage moves? Like, what might that be?" And the world found out.
Do you get nervous for your son, or is that the most exciting thing for you?
Now I'm pretty confident that he's got the goods. Yeah, I'm not nervous anymore. I'm excited to unveil him on an unsuspecting world. Yeah.
We've got 90 more questions about Roman, and then we're going to ask about you. Wait, Tom,
We've asked
I'm
you
a very
every
proud
question.
dad.
Yeah.
First I tell you, it's not nepotism when your kid's that fucking good. That's
right?
the way.
No, Booker and I, when we've seen video of your son and the song, and know the song from Venom, and seen you and him and Nandy play, it's just it gets us excited as music fans.
It's awesome, especially in a day and age where maybe like shredding rock guitar playing is not choking the top of the charts, right? To be able to have a generation, like that young, who's really sort of embraced that and is going for it in a way that's meaningful.
Are you anticipating kicking him out the door and sending him out onto the road like you did as a young man?
He can do whatever he wants. You know, like the one thing that I had was this kind of unconditional support from my mom, Mary Morello, and
103 years old now,
101. Don't age her.
Sorry.
Don't.
Well, she looks 90.
Yeah, she'd be. Okay. Yeah, she'd be. 103, Striker. I'm only 101 years old.
Sorry, Mary.
Yeah. She's a very powerful radio personality herself, as you may have
I've
heard.
heard her many times.
As you may have heard.
Yes.
But no, I mean, like it's kind of whatever he wants to do right now. I mean, he takes it serious. Like he's you don't need to tell him to go practice every day. He's in there writing songs, and this day kids can produce too. So on his iPad, he's able to you could make the White Album on an iPad these days. And
That's
so
right.
There's a lot of possibilities.
Speaking of charts and being at the top of them and music that has great guitar in it, the Battle of Los Angeles recently turned 25 years old.
It's kind of hard to believe. Yeah.
If I just say the song title, the album title to you, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it was a crazy situation because it was the Rage had that Battle of Los Angeles was Time Magazine's, Rolling Stone Magazine's, and Spin Magazine's album of the year.
Wow.
And then we stopped playing. So it's like it was bittersweet in some ways, but I'm so proud of that record. No, that record was not the easiest birth, but the fact that it exists in the world. And one of the things that I've been doing over the course of the last couple of years with my show, I've had a lot of different iterations. There's Audioslave, there's Prophets of Rage, Street Sweeper Social Club, the Atlas Underground stuff, the Night Watchman acoustic. In the last couple of years, I've really embraced the whole catalog. I have 22 records that I've made, 22 records, Tom. If you include the Springsteen one. And so when we go out and play, whether it's with Roman, whatever, is like we embrace all. We honor the Rage fan. Like everywhere I go, the one thing about like Rage Against the Machine music, it is, while the band has only played 19 shows in the last 14 years, that is music that is near and dear to people's hearts, and it really matters. And it's in 2024 and beyond, it's still going to matter. And so we play that music, we honor that music, and also really I have such love and respect for the fans of that music that have allowed a career of 30-plus years to continue, and me spending some time with you.
You've had
nice people today.
Thank you.
Band
Thank you.
after band after band.
Yeah.
Do you ache to be in another thing? Is there another project? No.
I'm very content. Like I've never been happy. Like, last tour was the biggest solo tour I did. Couldn't be more content. Just the thing is, like when you're in a band, the upside is that you get chemistry. You create something together that you never could create alone, and it's this magical thing that the four of you or whatever do. When you do solo stuff, you have purity, and it's purity of vision and intent, and the art is pure, and you hand select like the day, in a way that is very satisfying for me now. I love to do that.
I just saw a clip recently, you, Mikey from Incubus, and Perry, and a couple acoustic guitars, and just singing outside.
Sure.
Can you just tell Booker and I, not just about that exact moment, but Perry Farrell first on your radar, and you and his was where and when?
Sure. Oh my gosh. Well, when I moved to LA in '86, as Jane's was bubbling and ascendant, and I got a hold of a bootleg cassettes of them playing live, and they became my favorite band without ever having seen them or anything like that. And the first time that I don't know if I met Perry, the first time I was in a room with him, there was a rumor that Jane's Addiction, they were rehearsing for the Nothing Shocking tour somewhere in this little grungy studio, east side on Melrose, and somebody had an address. I just went into the room and sat down on the floor. Like this grimy carpet and some of their girlfriends and drug dealers and whatnot. Right. And I was just like, trip out.
Oh, I love that.
Are you still friendly with a lot of the bands from back in the day?
Sure.
Enough to where you say, "Hey, let's go jam." Is it still
sure?
Like
well,
that?
I mean, there's one of the things that I've always loved to do I do a lot of charity shows, a lot of benefit shows, activist-oriented shows, and things like that. Is to kind of just go through my phone and call up my friends and say, "Hey, do you want to play?" For example, this Roxy show, don't put this on before the thing.
Okay.
But like it's we've got a lot of Wu-Tang coming, and we've got Chuck D coming, and we've got, I believe, Slash is going to be there. We've got Ben Harper. It's just me calling them up and going, "Hey, we're doing a benefit for Wayne in memory of Wayne Kramer, the great Wayne Kramer of the MC5.
Yes.
A benefit for his great organization, Jail Guitar Doors. Do you want to jam?" And the thing you were mentioning, like with Perry before in that alley where we were playing, was some years ago, we would do these weekly benefit shows at the Hotel Cafe. $10 to get in, the people's price. We'd get together about 20 minutes beforehand to rehearse 4 hours of music, and then we would play. And one week it would be like a kid that I saw, a kid I saw busking on the street, and Motley Crue, and Alanis Morissette, and Nuno Bettencourt jamming with, Lord knows who. But there were so many people with like 1,000 people be outside. The club holds like 150.
Yeah.
There'd be hundreds and hundreds of people outside in the alleyway. So when the artists weren't performing, we would go out in the alley and just play for whoever was there.
Wow.
Let me, since you brought him up, tell the world how great Nuno Bettencourt is.
That's what I'm hoping I'm not sure how much he gets played on all 98.7.
He doesn't, but he is. When you watch this,
Yeah.
you know his music.
Yeah,
I mean,
dude.
with the extreme,
Well,
but
you don't
he
even
is
know.
a virtuoso.
You don't even know. You don't
Watching him play Eddie is because I'm the biggest Eddie Van Halen fan in the world, and watching him, I feel like Eddie's alive through him.
Yeah.
Like,
well, you're gonna trip because Nuno Bettencourt was my favorite guitar player about 5 years before Extreme had a record deal.
Wow.
I was going to school at Harvard. They were a Boston band that would play at a place called Celebration. It was like Wednesday metal nights. And we would go there. It was the only place you could see heavy metal videos because we didn't have cable or anything like that. So we would go, the doors would open, and once a month, a band called Extreme would play there. Nuno was at the time 16-year-old high school dropout or something like that, and just as good then.
Come on.
Just as good then. And I would stand there with my jaw on the ground going like, does anybody know that the greatest guitar player on the planet is like this Boston townie?
Right.
And
you've talked about yours. You spent years in a bedroom pounding it out, figuring it out.
Yeah.
You never considered yourself like, oh, I'm not one of these virtuosos. I did it through practice.
I work for every inch.
But what is it about these aliens that they just pop out?
He worked too, dude. He worked
Did
too.
he?
He worked too.
But he was, like you said, he was 16 and
yeah,
he was
well, I
a
think
virtuoso.
I didn't start playing until I was 17. He put in his work, I think, starting really young. But he arrived fully formed.
When you arrived in Los Angeles, did you ever feel intimidated by anything you saw out on the streets or in clubs by the talent of people who were your age or younger?
Yeah. I was intimidated by the fact that when I arrived in Los Angeles, I was expecting it to be a virtuoso kingdom of Steve Vais, and instead it was a bunch of faster pussycats.
Wow. Really?
I got the free papers that said, here's the hot local bands. And I'm like, I didn't have much money, but I saved up my $12 to go to the Troubadour to see, like, at the time, the band that was the front page, and it was a band called Faster Pussycat. And I was like, the place was packed. It was, people were going
Hairspray
wild.
everywhere.
And I was like, I can't do anything there's nothing in me that's anything on the stage. I may not be able to ever have a career in this town. Yeah.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
I'm just blown away by that. So, where do we go next? I'm trying to think where we're going next.
I watch a lot of. I got something for Tom. I watch a lot of these reaction videos on YouTube. Do you ever watch those where people?
I've seen
Rage
those, like
for
people,
the first time
in 2024, their first time they ever hear those. Some of those are pretty precious.
They are because it takes me back to when I heard Rage for the first time or played Audioslave for the first time on the radio, and you get those goosebumps and so excited. But there's one thing in particular I want to ask about, and it's Brad Wilk. When I see him drumming in the Like a Stone video, not going crazy. Can you just what? How good is that dude?
No, he's the greatest. Okay. So I was in a band called Lockup before Rage Against the Machine, and in the final days of that band, we were recycling drummers. Brad auditioned for Lockup, and I remember he and I from the first second we were in the room together played great. Now he had this ramshackle drum set. Like at the end of the first song, he had this drum set I was out of the Sears catalog, and he hit the cymbal, and the cymbal, the tiny tinny cymbal, just fell over. And I said, "You may not be ready for Madison Square Garden yet, or your gear may not be ready."
Right.
But I kept his number, and when literally the moment that Lockup broke up, I got a call from the singer. It finally boiled down. There's two of us in the band. He quit. I was the last one left. So the singer called me up and said, "Lockup is over." I hung up the phone and I called up Brad, and I said, "Do you want to jam?" And that was the beginning of the way that we play together. That's the thing I was talking about, chemistry. I had some of those riffs for the first Rage record. I dragged them all over town. I played with many, many drummers, some in very famous bands, who later in very famous bands, and it never sounded like Rage Against the Machine until Brad Wilk was playing the drums.
Wow.
When you look at music today, and you look back at when you started, or even prior to that, how did this magic always find one another? Because now there's an internet, there's a highway, there's a place where people could meet up, and there should almost be no excuse. And music should actually be better because they should. Nuno Bettencourt, was some kid in Boston, you said that you walked in, are you seeing?
Yeah.
How did it happen then? And was it just magic fairy dust?
I don't know. I think that there were a lot of bands, and one of the things that was different, the landscape was very, very different. Where there was no bands. When my band came up, it was Nirvana and Pearl Jam that commercially broke through, that allowed record companies to say, maybe for the first time, we don't know what's best. Right? And so they began like sort of signing Tool and, you know, and Rage and bands like that were clear. There was nothing on the radio like those kind of bands, but there was sort of this trust that a thing is, there's something in the zeitgeist of the world that is happening. And there were bands who were fearlessly and ferociously making music that was not commercially oriented, but connected. I'll say for me, like the best thing that ever happened in my career was a total failure. I was in this band Lockup, and I was sort of like junior. I joined a band. The older dudes, and I joined their band. We got a record deal, and we did everything everybody asked. You know, like the experts. It was Geffen Records. They had Guns N' Roses and the Eagles and whatnot, and you know, and the music got smoother. Like I had some of the guitar playing weirdness that would later make up a significant part of my sound. They said, guitar doesn't sound like that on the radio. Don't do that. I'm like, oh, you must know, right? And so we made a record that was a bland version of the band, and were summarily dropped. I was 27 years old. I had failed. I moved to Hollywood from Libertyville, Illinois, to get a record deal. I got it, and I was dropped, and I was done. And so but I was still a musician. And so I made a solemn vow. I'm like, I'm never going to play another note of music that I don't believe in, since I'm not going to ever be famous or make records. And that was when I began writing the riffs that would be my contribution to the first Rage Against the Machine record.
How do you find each other, though? How do you know? That's a better question when you walk in.
Well, here's the thing: is like you don't like. I knew. I mean, the first time I played with Brad, I was like, that's a great. Like we play great together, and we're playing like in front of. It's hard to even describe like 0 minus 0. We would rent a space. He and I would rehearse, just the two of us. We would rent a space in front of the drum set of a heavy metal band that rehearsed in another place. You know, and like,
right?
Yeah, and we're playing Bomb Track and Know Your Enemy and Freedom and Township Rebellion, or the riffs that would later, you know, manifest in those songs.
Did you friendship up first, or was it the musicianship with the instrument in front of you, where you said, I need to be with this person?
Yeah, it was really that. It was really like that, more of that. Like there was now it's different because there is the internet, but there was a thing called the Music Connection, you know, and there'd be an ad in there that was appealing or 60% appealing, and you'd call that person up and they'd be flaky and they'd never get back to you, etc. And finally you get in a room with someone and they're off their mind on drugs. You know, I moved here in '86, and you know, Rage formed in '91. So there was a lot of not finding the right.
This is the worst Craigslist story ever.
For 70 roses, I'll join your band.
Yeah. You have no idea. I mean, I would bore you with like the horror stories of like of me trying to figure out, especially someone like I was a metal guitar player. Like I came to Hollywood because in Circus and Hit Parader magazine, I saw that the Sunset Strip was awesome, and there was no room at the inn sign out for me there. Like my hair wasn't right, my skin wasn't right, my ideas, my politics weren't right. There was nothing that like fit in.
Rivers quote.
I was just going to say
the same story.
Yeah. Did you ever cross paths with Rivers, who started off in a much heavier band on the Sunset Strip?
No, I mean later in life.
Yeah, later in life. I have two more quick things.
Go.
Yeah.
Speaking of Rage Against the Machine, at least once a month I watch 40 seconds of what they say is your first show ever, which was at Cal State Northridge.
Yeah.
Was that really the first show? And how did that thing even happen?
That was the first public show.
Okay.
It was the first public show. I'll tell you, the first real show was Timmy had a friend in Huntington Beach whose parents were out of town.
Okay.
And we knew 5 songs at the time. And so, you know, we've set up there. We'd never played in front of. We played in front of one dude before at an industrial park, which almost merits its own story. We played 4 songs for this guy who used to walk back and forth in front of our place. He said, "What do you guys do?" We said, "We're a band." He said, "Can I hear you?" We're like, "I guess." So he heard Rage Against the Machine. One dude. He's sitting there. One dude. He's sitting there. We play him a couple of songs, and and we're like, "So what do you think?" And he stands up and sort of assumes a posture and says, "Your music makes me want to fight." That was the first review. We didn't know.
That's
right?
great. That's a great review.
So cut to the living room where the first song we played was "Take the Power Back," and we were so amped up that we played it at like 3 times the speed that it would one day manifest on a record. And when the beat dropped, there was a huge circle pit in the living room. Like the armoire was immediately overturned.
Nice.
It was an instant, immediate, like spiritually electric connection with the world. We played the 5 songs. People were going so bananas. We played the same 5 songs again.
Wow. Awesome. My last thing is more of a pitch than a question.
Yeah.
Be Real, Send Dog, Cypress Hill one day on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ballot. I think
They
made
deserve it.
such a huge
I think
impact.
they deserve it.
Those two voices
They
come
deserve it.
together.
Yeah.
The longevity, their background, all of it. I love Cypress Hill. That's
I
what
think,
I'm saying.
there are a lot of bands deserving of being in the
Yeah.
Rock Hall of Fame. I'm on the nominating committee, which is it's a dogfight every year,
Sure.
just to make the ballot. We don't put anybody in. We make the ballot that then
Yeah.
gets decided by a wider
That's
votership.
why I pitch it to you.
Yeah.
because,
But
maybe
they're
get it
great.
swirling
Yeah.
around in your head.
Your
Yeah.
speech was phenomenal. Do you put a lot of thought into that? Is it a few different thoughts? I mean, that was you drove that right down.
Well,
the
for
middle.
which one? I mean, I've done the
Well, the
Clash,
last one
Kiss,
for Rage.
and MC5. So, I spend a lot of time, writing those.
You
Spend a lot of
deliver.
time writing
You
those,
deliver. All right, should we wrap it up right
Let's
there?
wrap it up. Tom Morello.
Wow, Tom. God dang,
Okay.
that was
Good
fun.
luck with the
Okay,
show.
One last thing
Yes.
to hype for your people there. I'm in the midst, the songs Soldier in the Army of Love and One Last Dance are sort of the first forays. My next record is going to be my first ever solo rock album. And it's going to be the like on the two goalposts are like the biggest Morellian riffs of Rage and Audioslave, and then Springsteen's Darkness on the Edge of Town. That's what I'm working on now.
And guest singers in all songs?
Mostly not. Some guest singers. I'm singing a lot of it, but
Nice.
working some with Shooter Jennings on it, working with some other producers on it. But we're stealing my son's riffs wherever and whenever I
Excellent.
can.
And
He's
when
got,
those for
he's
free,
got that.
gonna
He's got the
drop.
plutonium grade right now. Oh, you think they're free? He asks all the time. He's like, how much money we make on Venom? I'm like, how much money did we make?
I had dinner one night. I showed up. It was at the Rainbow. You were with Eddie Trunk, and the internet has just sort of. They started not paying people, and I remember your frustration. Has any money come in yet? That's all I want to know, because
All I know
you
is,
were like,
all I know is
I don't know who's making
Roman,
the money. We're not.
saying Roman got a check. That's all I know.
Really? Good
Shout
for
out
him.
Roman, by the
Way
way.
to go.
Wait, Tom, when
He's
is the
a strong
full length?
negotiator.
When is the full length going to drop, do you think?
Still working on in 2025.
Okay, 2025. We cannot wait
Yeah,
to
yeah,
hear
yeah,
all the
yeah,
songs,
yeah.
man.
Thanks, man.
Well,
Thanks.
thank you so much for joining
Lovely
us.
man.
it's lovely seeing some old friends
Yeah,
and
There you go.
chopping it
This
up.
is
Yeah,
fun,
yeah.
dude.
A real
Thank you.
pleasure.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
Thank you,
guys.
buddy.
Thank you.